don't disagree with this part. I think the way that Woohoojin's going at this is fine too. Like I think it makes sense.
Bros, reload.
Fair enough. Should probably reload. I don't personally agree with this too much. I agree with the point that's being made right here. This is the part where me and Woohoojin will have different ideals. This is the worst piece of advice you can possibly give. So this is how to not panic in every gunfight. I don't know, it's been like a month or so since this video came. But basically, little bit of context. Woohoojin got outed for being boosted to Radiant, okay? He got boosted to Radiant by a person he coached. He was basically telling people that he was Radiant when he wasn't actually Radiant. At the end of the day, he made a mistake. He's like going for the Radiant climb now, and that's cool and all. But at the same time, people have always been giving this argument that if you're not good at the game, you can still be a good coach, which I am not against. But I also wanted to give my perspective, because if we're talking about a Radiant coach and a non-Radiant coach, sometimes the information given will be a little bit different. Sometimes the things that we notice might be a little bit different. And I figured might as well give that a try and see what he chooses to point out versus the things that I might choose to point out. Of course, this is a disclaimer. I think that even if he's not a Radiant player, I think he can still be a great coach. Woohoojin, without a doubt, is probably a great coach and has, done his fair share of research on his own information and, has put in a lot of effort into being a good coach. That's not something I want to take away from him, but I do want to say that this is something that I'm personally against, which is you shouldn't be faking the fact that you're Radiant and then doing your coaching, right? We all know that that's, that creates a little bit of a reputational boost, and that could have affected how people have taken his advice. So I'm here as a Radiant player. As you guys probably know, I am a Radiant player. I have reached Radiant multiple times throughout my, channel. If you guys look at it, it's almost always solo queue. I've hit 800 and 40 something RR. I was top 100. You can very easily confirm that I am a Radiant player, and I'm also a coach. So I figured, hey, maybe I'll take a look at his VOD and see if there's any differences. I'm going to try to go into this with complete, non-bias, even though you guys probably know that I'm a little bit miffed about this, because I do think that it's not fair to other people to claim you're Radiant when you're not actually Radiant and lie to people. But I'm going to try to do this with as little bias as possible and try to look at things as objectively as possible, because that's what I feel like is required to be a good coach, and to also, look at things from a balanced perspective.
That looks nothing like your ranked fights. The first fight of the fight. Do you see the target confirmation? There's a pause where you actually make sure you're... I love that. That pause does not exist here.
I know exactly.
It doesn't exist. I genuinely panic. I know, because you're stressed. You're focused on too many things.
I'm gonna just take a look at this again.
Make sure
I feel like
it doesn't exist.
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like in this situation there was a stop to confirm, but I mean, even then, that shot was actually really clean, I feel like. And if you were to swing out and to take a fight on that angle, I mean, I probably would have just taken the shot anyway. So the idea here is that he's saying that this person is not confirming their shots when they're in game versus when they're playing in a deathmatch. Which is, if you're not confirming your shots, you're kind of just shooting off of instinct and praying to God that it hits. And if your instinct is very well developed, then it's a good thing. If it's not well developed, then you have a little bit of a situation where you might actually miss your shots and not be able to recover in time. I mean, I feel like this is a very small example of that, though. We'll have to see as we go.
Too many things. Of course you panic. Ranked is way harder than deathmatch. The floor becomes literally lava.
That's fair.
While in deathmatch, it's just the carpet. I know, but this is your problem. We need to overcome that. And trust me, we can overcome that. But we get to rank and it's all rush shots. Let's go next round. I want to find a new fight.
There's target confirmation in this situation.
It's clear as day. Clear as day. Clear as day. The only way to fix this is more ranked. Because your deathmatch technique is good. Your rank technique is the problem. Here are some methods to fixing it. Method 1, and I did this myself.
I mean, before we go into this, I do think that there was target confirmation in this case. I mean, target confirmation isn't to always just hit the headshot, right? It's to make sure you're aiming at the target. When you're looking at that Jett, take the first fight, to swing and then aim for this, he's very clearly making sure that he's on target before he tries to go for this. I think Woohoojin's also correct in that the deathmatch technique is much more clear and clean than the in-game technique so far. So
method 1, And I did this myself when I climbed to immortal the first time. 2 accounts. We'll call them account A and account B. Let's say account A is gold 1, 80 RR, and account B is gold 1, 20 RR. I would lock account A, as in I would not be allowed to play on account A until account B surpasses it. So I'll only play on account B. Even if I derank to silver 2 or whatever, they'll keep playing on account B, but eventually account B sometime later will be gold 2, 1 RR. And you know what I do? I lock it. No playing on it. Now I'll play on account 1. The reason why I'll do this is it means I can never lose my peak. I always have an account that's at my peak RR because people associate value to their peak, to their rank. Because you associate value to your rank, you rush your shots, you panic, you're worried. Oh no, I'm gonna lose. I just hit diamond. Well, now, right after you hit diamond, you don't touch that account. You play on your platinum 3 account until it passes your diamond account. So now you can never lose your peak RR. It's impossible. This is one option.
Okay. This is, like, before we go into more options, this is something that people do. And I don't think it's something that's necessarily a bad thing. It's this sort of like phenomena where your alt account makes you actually play a little bit better because you're not as anxious while playing. And therefore, because you're not as anxious. With that being said, though, as a coach, I generally don't suggest doing this unless the person has a lot of time available and is capable of putting in that like consistent effort to try to play, in which case I think there's a lot of better opportunities for me to teach them how to improve faster. So the thing with this is that there's like 2 weaknesses, okay? I'm gonna give you the first weakness, which is it's successfully avoiding the problem, but it's not dealing with the problem. Like it doesn't make you more capable of dealing with the pressure of ranked. But I definitely see the value in it. I can see that like some people do like to do that. And some people who struggle a lot with ranked anxiety and don't know how to work with it will come to this conclusion.
I'm just trying to help you tackle your anxiety.
So that's the first option, it seems.
There
Okay.
are pretty obvious pros to this. Can't lose our rank. You just can't. It's impossible to lose your rank. Works very well. I find almost everybody who does this, they pog off their gourds. Cons, no skins. More time. And
Okay, more time. Yeah, no skins, I guess.
This is why I have an
That's
alt
fair.
account. You guys have seen my raised practice account, tier 3s. It's why I have skins on that account too.
My suggestion for if you're struggling with ranked anxiety and you're struggling to like play the game and be confident, you know, the fact that you're at your peak and you're scared of losing your peak is causing you to feel a little bit scared and on edge when you play the game, or just to avoid the game in general. My suggestion is to try to reframe your mindset. Rank is a representation of your skill, quote unquote, but rank is not the representation of your progress. And your improvement is what creates the progress that gets you to the new rank. There's no losing, there's only learning. You either win or you learn.
Option 2. Accountability. Your biggest fear is failure, but we can redefine what failure means. So for example, Rose, if we take a friend of similar elo, I'm going to use Dr. Turnip as an example because she happens to be like the same elo as you. Let's say you and Dr. Turnip now, instead of caring about your rank, you only care about whether or not you panicked in your gunfights, and you hold each other accountable to that. Now you're afraid of letting your friend down. So we just shift that fear to something else, a fear that constructively drives us towards the route of improvement. So now instead of being afraid of losing a rank game, we're afraid that our friend is going to rank up much faster than us because we're not taking our time in our gunfights. And they are. They're starting to do that. And option 3, Zen. I can't do option 3, but I know people who have. You just sort of like trust talking banana. This is route to success. Improvement is a spiral. And we draw this spiral. Your rank might be here on the spiral, which means later in time, your rank will be lower, but even later in time, your rank will be higher. And if you trust me when I tell you that improvement is like this, because I know it is, and I promise it is, then you can accept short-term loss because you know it will be followed by long-term gain. Like, imagine me right now. It's impossible for me to drop into silver. Agreed? I'm incapable of being that bad at the game, but I could.
Okay, yeah. So first of all, I would say option 2 is still playing with fear. It's just trying to redirect your fears, which is to say that, you know, instead of defining my fear as this thing, and in some cases it's actually negative because you're adding more fears onto the list of things that you're fearing. sometimes a fear big enough is going to cause you to like think about a different type of factor and therefore remove all these other smaller fears, and maybe that could help you. But playing through the aspect of becoming more and more afraid, in my opinion, is not a very good way to go. I would say if you were to change option 2 to be more of like focus on the positives of each situation. So instead of thinking about things in terms of what failure means to you, think about what success means to you. Think about what winning is actually going to return, right? I win this game and my friend's going to be very happy for me. I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm going to put in more practice. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to start seeing more of a positive association with doing things, right? And sometimes it also means putting a positive association to the negatives. What if I redefine failure? Instead of saying that failure is strictly negative, what if failure is actually an opportunity for me to improve? Because it is. Now, number 3, okay, like, I mean, funny, like, I mean, it's kind of funny because it does seem a little bit like cult leader-esque kind of thing, but I think it's important for you to have trust in your coach, because if someone has faith, right? If someone has faith in another player, they're going to listen to their advice a lot more, right? And that's a good thing, unless it's a lie. I think at the end of the day, Zen is actually more of a final option, which is to remove the things that are affecting you and letting things run through and building up such a strong mental clarity that you're able to deal with negative emotions, deal with your fears, let them affect you, but let them only affect you a certain amount. You have the ability to actually view ranked as a opportunity and a positive expression of, you know, your struggles and a potential for you to learn more, rather than a negative thing that you have to deal with that, you know, is stopping you from chasing your goals. That's my opinion.
When they're coming through, you can slow them down, and then KO can flash. 3 kills.
I mean, you're just out here to prove me right, aren't you? You spend 40 seconds talking strategy to your teammates, and then you willingly buy Frenzy on Breeze.
I mean, I personally wouldn't like make fun of it, because I think, like, I mean, this is just like the way that, you know, it goes, right? But I think making fun of it probably isn't the best in this situation. But I would say that Woohoojin does have the right idea. Like, you don't want to overcomplicate things when you're playing with random teammates, right? When you're playing in ranked, if you overcomplicate things, you're going to end up having a problem where if they don't follow it perfectly, random variables gets introduced. I think it's a good thing to try to make plays. What instead you should do is to take your IGLing and transfer it to a different aspect. If you're playing duelist, right, you should definitely be trying to play much more aggressively with your teammates' utility. How about you call a strat surrounding your own playstyle, which is, you know, maybe I want to flash into A main on Breeze, right? I want to flash into A main, and I'm going to peek through, and then therefore I'll be able to take my fight, get out. The factors are reduced down up to just KO throwing a good flash and you swinging out and peeking with that game plan.
Frenzy on Breeze? This has to be the worst map for it.
Yeah, Frenzy is not ideal, I'd say. Okay. All right. It's an interesting kill.
Reload. You've got to
yeah, it's like no need to muck, but like I think right here. So I would say what I think is the biggest mistake here is that if this arrow is like missed, right? First of all, the arrow missed, and also we have a wall on A main, especially a harbor wall. I always suggest holding that smoke like every single time, because it's just such a free kill if someone jumps out. And if it's not a free kill, you're still going to be doing fine, because it's like they have to adjust to you and run through like, you know, a complete like blank wall, right? And react to that. You got 1 kill. That's cool. Your dash is still up. I'd say you reload right here and then swing again.
Rose, reload!
Fair enough. Should probably reload, but nice. That was a good play on the flash.
You have to reload. Thank you.
So right here, I would definitely pop my dash and swing wide. You know? I don't think the biggest mistake is the frenzy, but I think there is an idea around it. Okay, honestly, that wasn't bad at all. I think that play is actually pretty good. I think frenzy is not ideal, but frenzy with what she was trying to do, or like, you know, in this situation was trying to play is kind of reasonable because you're trying to play closer range fights. You got to dash. You can actually play around backside pretty confidently. So I wouldn't say that was actually a big mistake, assuming that was intentional. Okay.
Is your gun malfunctioning?
Should anticipation.
I wonder what he says about this. I wonder what his like justification on that situation is.
You're killing me. You're killing me. Where do I begin? Let me boot up Breeze. Okay, so we know they're A main. I don't like the first angle we played. I'll say it, but you know, sure, whatever. We're here now. My instinct is to smoke. The reason why, right now, the enemy team knows that we're stuck. Does that make sense? And when we're stuck, it's a bad thing. There's a million things they can do to counter us when we're stuck. But the simplest is like, I mean, they can just hold us. And so, yeah, you want to flash, but like, there's an easy way to be self-sufficient here, and it's just toss a smoke down. And then you don't even have to move because the smoke, it's Schrodinger's Jett. After you throw the smoke, now you can be backside. And that's like all that matters. All that matters is that you no longer are definitely stuck. And creating that bit of uncertainty is really, 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 really important.
Okay, so I think that the justification here for putting that smoke is all right. The correct play, I think, is to throw a smoke in that spot. However, I think the main reason this problem even occurred, in my opinion, if we were to look at like what was actually the primary mistake that was made here, so what I would actually point out right here is that there's actually a mismatch in what you're focused on in terms of your mechanical, like what your mechanical focus is currently on. You don't want to be ever holding an angle and like be primed to hit the shot and then not to even take a shot, because it seems more like you are actually holding this angle, right? And then when they swung, you weren't actually ready because your crosshair wasn't placed in the right spot and your reaction wasn't like tailored to it, which means you have a mismatch in what your personal limitations are with your reaction speed is tied to a lack of understanding of why you're holding the angle the way you're holding it.
And this is sort of the story of why you're in gold. That's not the best fight. This fight's fine, Ariane. I don't mind this fight. I like getting aggressive. We're playing duelist. They're on weak buy. I kind of fuck with it. Is it the best? No, of course not. If this was a Radiant player, we'd probably talk about it.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. This fight, I'm gonna take a very wild guess and say this fight is probably going to be a bit of a telltale sign for why I think it's not about death matching and confirming your shots and that kind of stuff. I'm gonna actually go on a limb and say that the reason why this person is actually struggling could very well be due to the lack of a core fundamental, which is the ability to spray. That fight was very easy to confirm and capitalize on if you just sprayed the gun. And I'm gonna take a guess and say this person probably struggles with spraying and has probably been told to not spray the gun and to focus on shot confirmation and to focus on taking clean shots. I actually think it's not the confirmation, it's the lack of awareness in the middle of a duel to realize that some fights are much easier to take by just spraying the gun rather than trying to aim for the head. Think of it this way, right? If I'm taking bursts and I'm not comfortable with how I reset my burst, so let me actually open up let me just open this up and maybe I can open up Valorant and show us a little bit if you guys want to see this. The only time a headshot actually gets you a better kill is generally within the first like 2 or 3 bullets. If not, then body shots would have technically been better. You're not trying to make sure that your bursts are well controlled. For example, like, right? Like, I don't know the exact timing of when these shots are supposed to hit, right? Because the accuracy is going to go down because you're spraying and there's recovery. And then you also have to time the timing of when that recovery is done before you shoot again, which is why you don't actually time your shots around the burst necessarily. You time it around your movement. If I'm strafing, right? I have a general understanding of when my bullets are going to be like recovered, but I'm not perfect on it. I'm moving instead and focusing on the fact that I can move onto the target and then take my shot. However, with something like a spray, right? If I'm spraying, it's just always going to be the same recoil pattern for like the first 5 to 6 bullets. Every single time, it's always going to go up at the same rate, right? It might not be the same bullets, but the way to control it is still pulling down, which means if someone's swinging out here and you swing out, and you just shoot them like a couple times like this in the center mass, they are dead. Right? But if you try to do like, you know, sprays and like your movement's not clean and there's all these other things, this is when you overcomplicate your mechanics and now you're whiffing your shots.
I tell them to worry less about what these guys are doing and worry more about how they take their engagements, because the human brain is very bad at improving at multiple things at once. Humans can't text and drive. Technically, if we lived in a world where competitive texting and driving was a thing, we could get up to that point, but we would generally break it down into parts. We'd first learn how to drive at a very high level. We'd learn how to text very quickly. We'd combine the two in some like simple drills and courses, and eventually we could combine everything into a very complicated course. But right now you're texting too much, and so you suck at driving. Yeah, this fight was good. You want to know why you lost? It's because of this moment right here. You actually had this guy, but you walked out in the open and now he can body shot you because this guy is trash. He can't hit your head. Just like you can't hit his head. But now you've exposed your body, and so he body shots you twice and you die.
I don't personally agree with this too much. I agree with the point that's being made right here, but I think this actually goes further into what I feel like is over confirmation, right? So this is like a situation where, yes, moving into the open made the shot easier for them. You don't want to do that, but it's kind of like the same situation where you weren't comfortable with spraying, is that you're not comfortable with taking shots, resetting, and taking more shots. You're almost like you're constantly trying to make sure that you're on the target for a little bit too much, and you almost put too much mental energy into confirming you're on the target, and therefore you lose like the ability to execute on your aim and mechanics properly. And that mental process causes you to slow down your own like aim and mechanics, and also, you know, how fast you're going to shoot this guy. Moving into the open, I think, is the low-hanging fruit that is very easy to kind of like see, but it's not actually the problem. If target confirmation is a split-second decision, to what degree does it make sense to think of it that way? So it's a good idea for you to build target confirmation and to build up the capability of being able to confirm much faster. But there's also a certain point at which if you're constantly trying to confirm your shot way too much, you're going to make it harder for yourself to actually hit the shot. Whereas in some cases, you don't actually, it's actually because you're overthinking it that's causing you to miss that shot, rather than just taking it easy and just like, you know, lining up the shot and just going in. There's like sort of like a principle where it's like, if you try too hard, you actually get worse at it. The act of becoming a master at your craft is taking these conscious processes and turning them into unconscious processes.
Popping dash.
I don't think you hit the calm popping dash, to be fair, but I mean, I guess it works, but.
Focusing on my crosshair.
So I think, I mean, I don't know if this is something that like he noticed, but okay, so I think this was actually kind of weird that I would point this out myself, which is it's kind of hard to like, I guess, make that decision in a moment. But generally speaking, if you're going to use your dash, you have to have a reason to be popping your dash, right? Like,
Popping dash.
you know, like you're popping your dash right here, but like, no, what's the goal with your dash? Is your goal to just like see if there's an enemy and then dash away if there's an enemy, or is it to like take a fight with someone, potentially get a kill, and then dash away if needed?
So we lose that fight and we take it poorly, but I don't like having to get into that position in the first place. Like the way I want to see you like starting this round is like, come over here, hop up, look for these guys, take a fight mid. Notice I'm not exposed to elbow. You don't see anybody mid, peek elbow, hop over here. Like, this is how we should be playing, Jett. This is how Radiants play, Jett. If you play like this in golds, you'll be the first Jett a gold player has ever seen play this aggressively, and you'll just dominate the whole lobby. We're so passive. Our impact on the outcomes of the round.
I mean, okay, so this is one of the things where it's like, I don't think it's like necessarily bad on Woohoojin in this case, but I would say I definitely think this is the type of thing where it's like you're not really sure how to like help them fix the issue, and instead you propose a different set of game plans, which makes sense to me. And it's also helpful in some cases if that's like clearly the issue that they're seeing. But I don't think in that situation it's about the play style of being more aggressive. I think it's more about recognizing the value of your utility in how you can go aggressive with it. If you just told them to go up aggressive, sure, they'll like go up aggressive and do stuff, but they don't know why they're doing it. Like for me, I think the dash was the most important part, right? The dash not being used is in a way a sign of being too passive as a player, right? And the second thing is right here, when you're swinging wide, and you whiff the shot, I think this is more of like a lack of the ability to spray and trace players, and also maybe a little bit of getting flustered. Like you swung out and you weren't expecting them, and therefore you actually rushed your shot really hard without a good reason to.
Right now, if they fight A main, what do we do about it? Nothing. Okay, think about it this way. They can rush A, they can rush B, they can split A, they can split B. Rush A, rush B, split A, split B. And if we assume they're all equally likely, which is totally fine, of course they're not, but it doesn't matter, then what's the least annoying one for us to be not involved in? Rush B, because we have a sentinel. So if they rush B, I'm down to not be involved, because we can't be involved in everything. We can play in a way that gets us involved in all of these other scenarios. Just 75% of the rounds, we get to have impact on the outcome of it as duelist. And that would involve pushing out mid a bit though. Somebody in chat has suggested mid doors. Mid doors can work and I'm down. It's a bit of a suboptimal peak. I wouldn't recommend it at a higher level. However, for gold player, I don't mind. That's fine. Normally gonna see Jets do. And we did this on the round we had a sheriff, is we came out mid like this. Now we get to fight the split A. We get to fight the split B. But additionally, if you come further out, if they start rushing A, you can come really fast. Look for a potential mid lurker, and you're already here. There's no shot it's retake yet.
I'm not gonna lie, that's a little bit overcomplicated. I think it's just a little too overcomplicated for understanding what's good and what's bad. I think add a much bigger picture instead of adding that sort of math. It's just to say that like if you want to carry your ranked games, you have to be capable of putting yourself into more situations to make an impact. If you play very passively, it's hard to get that type of impact, and therefore you're more at mercy of what they're doing. Right? But like, I don't think you really want to do like a sort of like a list of different plays they can make and then how I can be close to them. Like, I think that's overcomplicating. Yeah, I think that's just a little bit too much overthinking. Like, I don't even think about that when I go into games, and maybe that's like a problem of mine, right? And maybe it's a problem with other, but like, I know for a fact some of my ranked teammates in Radiant, those duelists do not think about this kind of stuff, about like being in more action and being able to find themselves in more action. They just choose certain positions that they're comfortable with and absolutely kill it in those positions. And then if they want to change things up, they have like a small game plan to change up the way that they play. I think one thing that Woohoojin is mixing up here is reactively being in more parts of the fights and therefore reacting to the enemy's tempo versus creating the tempo. If you're a duelist, you want to create that tempo. You just make your play, and then if your play is done well, they can't do anything against that. They have to do the reaction.
My ult's ready.
I'm not happy with this gunfight. I was fine with the sheriff gunfight because it looked like you were trying to aim for the head, but this fight against Jett is making me mad, Rose. Because right here, you're at head level, give or take. And as we aim at the Jett, your crosshair actively gets pulled down and you aim center mass, which tells me that you are not focused on trying to shoot her head.
That's not an issue. Nothing wrong with not trying to shoot their head. In a situation at this range, like, you're not trying to necessarily always hit the head, right? You're trying to kill them before they kill you. If you're at this big of a distance, I actually think that it's very reasonable for you to aim for body. If you're trying super hard to aim for the head, that's where the shot confirmation becomes a very like specific thing. In fact, like, I think it's better if you don't hit the head because you're allowed to like kind of move around much more comfortably, and you're progressively actually make it very hard for them to kill you unless they're hitting the head instantly. Sometimes hitting them in the body one time is actually better for you because you hit them and they're stuck, and now you aim for the head, and then now it's a free kill. I think this is pointing out something that doesn't really actually matter.
I don't need you to actually shoot her head. I need you to try to shoot her head. And in this gunfight in particular, you are clearly satisfied with the body because there's no world you would left click on this frame.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie, that looks pretty much on the head, you know, very slightly under. I would say I'm very satisfied with hitting the body.
If your priority was a headshot. So I see your priority here as not dying or something, like you're panicked.
See, look, the way the fight that turns out is so good, right? Like, the Jett literally stands there and he's not able to do anything. And in some cases, the movement being stuffed makes it harder for them to hit their shot because they're not able to move around, and they might be internally thinking that they're going to swing to the left or do like a quick little strafe, and then they end up missing their shot because their movement didn't happen. And now their aim adjustment is off. But this is like really advanced like dueling. Probably don't have to worry about that.
Like, what are the threats right now? Mid lurk, halls lurk. I guess they canceled a B. I don't see A main as a threat. We have 3 dudes looking at it. And the way that you're looking at it is passive because Harbor has a deeper line. So we won't see them A main right now. It's like in my head, I'm already dropping to look mid or I'm opening door. And
I would never open door, first of all.
asking Cypher to tap cam.
There's a hell no on the open door. That cam doesn't see everything, but I think that he's just offering suggestions, which isn't a bad thing. I personally think this is also a little bit overkill on everyone just holding this one angle. I think I would have stayed in halls, and if I weren't to stay in halls, I might have gone down to mid. So I think the overall advice to like not double hold things is correct.
They're acceptable. But what you're doing right now is so passive.
I don't think it's passive either, but it's you know, one of the, it's like, sure, you killed them, right?
Like,
Like,
you
which is
were
fine.
not needed for this.
Spike down A.
In all reality, you weren't really needed. But I don't think that's something to really like. I think that's something that you don't really need to point out. Like honestly, like
Watching mid.
that's like very small like nitpick. I feel it's not a hugely important thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice, holding mid. Cool.
Exactly. Good shit. Now the way you watched mid got a little passive for my liking, but perfect. We finally did something where we controlled some space.
Yeah, like right there, like so many little like small movements. You don't need to complicate. You just kind of swing out and just shoot it in the body, bro. They're already like half swinging, half shooting and stuff like that. If I was like a Radiant player who is not able to hit the head for some reason in this situation, spray is where I'd go.
I don't like them at all. I like the positioning. I like that we're taking this engagement. You need to focus on them more. You're too willing to shoot at the body. It's happening every gunfight. You're aiming too low. This guy's completely stationary. Their head's not even moving. And once again, you willingly shoot their body.
Okay. This is the part where me and Woohoojin will have different ideals, I think, and it's very clear the direction that the coaching has gone in this situation has kind of diverged, right? I'm more focused on, I think, the part where you're not comfortable with your burst and probably don't know how to spray properly and not taking the advantages that you're given, and also working with just being able to confirm body shots and to spray it. And I think Woohoojin is on the side that's saying that you need to keep on aiming for the head. I think that, like, you know, our ideals are very different. I personally see shooting at the head as a good thing to try to practice, but not something that makes other fights not worthwhile. You don't want to be perfect when you just start off. Like, the more you're going for the ideal instead of understanding the practical and being good at the practical first, the more your ideal becomes unrealistic and weak. Think of it like this, okay? You have someone who is good at spraying, good at headshots, right? And then you have someone who is okay at spraying, or maybe bad at spraying, right? And someone who is great at headshots. In my opinion, when you are a player in this situation where you are okay at spraying and great at headshots, you are playing with an imbalance in how you actually are. Because in a situation where good at spraying is enough, right? Good spray, you know, is a check. The person who is okay at spraying is going to not be able to spray them, and they're going to try to do headshots when maybe headshots isn't worthwhile. For example, someone who's got like 50 HP left, right? And just takes 2 body shots. You choose headshot, like aiming for the head, as a principle that you don't understand. Right? It's the same thing with like the opposite, which is if you're great at spraying and then you're bad at headshots, you're going to spray every single time. You're never going to see what being good at headshots is like. However, if you're someone who is good at headshots and good at spraying, then in any given situation, you can make the judgment and say, I'm going to spray the body here, or I'm going to shoot the head. And in those situations, you have a much clearer mind because you know that this was the best option for you in that fight and also the most comfortable option for you. I think in a lot of cases, it's good to create a balance. You want to be good at spraying. You want to be good at headshots. You want to ideally choose to work at headshots, right? But it's okay for you to spray because you're good at it, and you could choose the right situations to do so. Anyways.
One enemy remaining.
Clean shot. That was pretty clean.
He's on the right hand side.
Long.
Well
Demon
played.
one touch.
Well played.
Okay, Rez, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I want you to be the type of player in this 5v1 that does this. So there's like a Viper smoke or whatever here. You switch to classic and you do this. Like, you have to develop your ego if you're gonna play duelist. Fight this guy. There's no downside to dash up drafting and pushing the dude.
Long.
I mean, I see where he's going with it. He's like, you have to have a little bit of X factor as a duelist and the willingness to kind of just run it down on people. But like, I don't know, bro. Like it doesn't seem like very useful advice in this case. I think the principle of it is there, but like, it's just not what you're really like, you know, focused on, right? Like when you think about it, right? Like the advice might be true in the sense that you do want to have that X factor, right? But like, how do you build that X factor? You don't build the X factor by turning off your brain and then just jump it down and like just go all over the place. That's not what building confidence is about. The confidence is for you to recognize that in that situation, there's nothing that they can do. And if your teammates are following up on you, you make it harder for the guy to hit you. But like, you don't even have to do that in like a 5v1 anyways, right? Like that's just BMing them. Building confidence is cleanly getting the kill like this Jett just did. Like right here, right? Boom, clean shot. Cool. This is confidence right there. You get that? You're like, damn, I'm kind of nice at this game. I'm kind of feeling it now. You don't rely on something really cheap and random, which is like dash updrafting and doing some other stuff in order to build your confidence. That's just arrogance. It's fine.
Yeah. Like, I'm not even joking. It's almost certain tens would dash updraft here.
Tens would not dash updraft there. Tens does not do that kind of stuff. He just one taps the guy like in that situation. Arrogance is not confidence, guys. Remember, arrogance is not confidence. Confidence is proving your abilities through results and then letting that turn you into someone who believes in yourself.
Yeah, we're really passive. I see you frequently with dash up in on angles, and I don't like it. Like all of these peaks that you've done so far, I would not have primed dash yet. Because if you see the enemy, like here or here, that you have cover right here. Once I get more out like this, now I'll prime dash, because now you'll notice I'm exposed to that and this. And now if an enemy appears on my screen, I can flick a shot and dash away. But right here, I don't need dash.
I don't disagree with this part. I think the way that Woohoojin's going at this is fine too. Like I think it makes sense. Is that like you don't want to pop your dash way too early like this, honestly. It doesn't really quite make that much sense. But if you are peeking into a very high engagement area, you might want to pop your dash, right? I think the way that you clear this is actually more indicative of a problem that you're having, which is you are not aware of your own limitations, right? From the crosshair placement, your movement is going out and then you're making the adjustment as after your movement goes out. They need to be kind of done at the same time. Or this is something that's important that I tell other people, and I say it's like this, like movement is a window to aim. Right? If I'm moving, I can't shoot because I'm inaccurate, but I can definitely aim while I'm moving, right? So in my opinion, every single time you move, it should be the window for you to intentionally aim at wherever you're expecting the enemy to potentially be. So in this case, it's either that you're not aware of the enemy potentially being there, or it's that you're letting your movement go without you preparing your own aim to adjust to that. This review feels more like a difference of mentality / ideals, just how it seems, because a lot has been, he's not wrong, but I would say this, both are good, correct, but just has different preferences. Yeah, so honestly, it's different preferences, but I want to also say that preferences are not mutually the same value and the same correctness. Let's just say, for example, you made a omelet, right? You made an omelet and it was badly salted, but the big picture question, the big problem is that the egg was overcooked to hell and the egg was really, really bad. If someone is trying to coach you, if someone is trying to give you sage advice on how to make that omelet better, the big problem that they have to first solve is, hey, I think it'd be good for you to learn how to cook the egg properly. And let me try to teach you how to cook that egg properly. But technically speaking, if someone were to say, hey, I want you to pour the salt a little less, make it not as salty or not as peppery, they are also technically correct. However, they're missing the point. They're not pointing out the important part that actually provides you with a bigger improvement and the core problem that's at hand. So you can teach someone, oh, hey, like, you know, don't put as much salt next time. Okay, they're gonna make a really shitty egg, like omelet, but at least it's not as salty. Whereas in the other case, it could be like, I'll teach you how to make a better omelet, right? Now they make a better omelet, and then you find out, okay, I mean, at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a little bit salty and it's a little bit peppery. It's not too ideal, but maybe if you get that omelet cooked well, maybe the omelet has bigger surface area and the amount of salt that you threw in was actually correct. That little 5% moment, that like 5% that you're focusing on is the difference between someone who really understands what's the problem and someone who has an idea of the problem but can't express it in a full way. And I'm not saying that Woohoojin is definitely like that. I think in some cases he's got the right idea. But I think in other cases he's focused on a lot of small things, and I think the small things is not very good to learn from because you're overcomplicating the picture. It's more about focusing on the big picture, getting the big picture correct as a lower ranked, and then focusing on the small things once when you've actually become that level. Like once you've reached the level at which you're like playing an ascendant and your big picture is mostly correct, That's when you focus on the small picture things that then enhance your big picture. Yeah, like do touch-ups when everything is done. Don't do touch-ups when you're still not even fully done with the picture yet. You're kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket in some sense. I think Hooj is missing the big picture understanding that it's not about the small decisions that are made. It's that there is a bigger problem that causes these small decisions to be made, which is the mechanical aspect of movement and aim is not very well applied. And then also the ability to take fights is at the very core based on your own comfortability and your own limitations.
I genuinely panic. I know, because you're stressed. You're focused on too many things.
I just want to point out one thing, all right, guys? And this is not to like make fun of Woohoojin, but like if you're focused on too many things and that's why you're panicking, why are you adding more things to think about? That's not the big picture. Like you're teaching them about the touch-ups, but you're telling them that they're thinking too much about the touch-ups in the first place, right? In which case you're kind of fueling that problem in a very unconscious way.
Because it's all in your head. In your head, ranked, let's draw your little room. You need to jump from your bed to your chair, and the floor is genuinely lava. And so it makes it harder to jump the way that you would jump when you're playing DM, where it's the same jump, but it's a red carpet. It's not real lava. And so you know you're not going to die. While over here, it's terrifying. And so you're clouded by judgment. You're more likely to fail. So the perfect example of this is a basketball free throw, because in practice, mechanically, it's identical to in-game. However, in-game, it's so much harder. Study reveals practice free throw percentage is much better than game free throw percentage, of course. And this is true for everybody in ranked and deathmatch as well.
Okay, first thing I want to point out right now, I don't think that this analogy is necessarily pointing towards a thing that I think Hooj is thinking of. When we think about like someone missing the free throw, right? It means that they have a understanding of how to mechanically do the free throw, but then in a game it's harder to. But you also recognize that in a game it's mechanically the same, but there's so many more things going on. There's the crowd yelling at you, the pressure of the game itself causing you to feel nervous, and there's also fatigue. Practice is never going to be the same as actual match time. That's a fact. It's in your genes. You can't genetically train yourself to deny it. Yes, you can. You can train yourself to become comfortable with discomfort, but it's a very rough process. But like if you think about it, LeBron James is not going to get nervous in a collegiate basketball game, but they're still both matches. There's still going to be a crowd cheering at you. The stakes are super low though, and therefore you don't feel like you're actually the same level of pressure. The pressure at the end of the day comes from strictly mental things. You're afraid of the repercussions of losing. High expectations is a big part of it. If you are a perfectionist at heart, you are going to put more pressure on yourself, right? Like those things are all different mental barriers to working around your anxieties. A very mentally balanced person is able to take those things and regulate them very quickly. If I'm playing, a game, at the end of the day, it's just a game, right? Not easy to do that. First of all, I'm going to tell you guys, that's not an easy thing to think about, right? But if someone who genuinely thinks, I'm just going to play a game and like fuck around and play a game, it's much easier for them to do some plays and be confident doing it. But if you're able to remove certain parts of the fear in your head, for example, removing your mechanical shakiness because you're confident in your practices and you've put in a lot of time, or if you put in the time to make sure that like playing while you're fully like prepared to play and you're at your 100% and you're like, putting in all your effort, or you realize that losing isn't the end of the world and then you're going to keep on improving regardless of whether you win or lose, those things can make it much easier for you to play the game.
In an NBA game, that free throw does matter. That affects their paycheck. It's their job. They can't fully convince themselves it doesn't matter because it does, okay? In ranked, I'll tell you right now, Rose, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you whiff on this Reyna. You're a gold player. You don't get paid to play Valorant. You're not gonna get paid to play Valorant. You do this as a hobby for fun in your free time. And you can completely suppress this urge to rush as a hobbyist Valorant player if you focus on your gunfights more in ranked.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is the worst piece of advice you can possibly give to someone. You literally can't tell someone to not care about the things that they care about. That game matters. It matters a lot. Okay, like all of that is important to the player. These things are all important. First of all, the rank doesn't matter for when things actually start mattering, right? If you're in gold, a game that you lose is gonna feel just as bad as if you're in ascendant with the same sort of like mindset. It's all about that mindset, right? Like I still feel bad when I lose my rank games. However, I try to make sure that when I play these rank games, I feel better because if I lose, at the very least, I have something I learned. Like if you imagine someone who's playing professionally, that free throw is gonna matter a lot. If I miss this free throw, it's gonna affect my salary. It's gonna affect my team's performance. What if you're LeBron James? What if you make so much money that money doesn't matter to you anymore? Does that mean that someone else who is caring about how much money he's making or thinks that if he's gonna miss his free throw, he's gonna lose his salary, can't care about them missing a free throw because they're gonna lose their salary? No, it still matters to that person. It just doesn't matter to LeBron James because he's rich as fuck. At the end of the day, you still care, and it's not wrong to care. It's wrong for you to try to dismiss it and to not act like it's not there in the first place and to push it away, because that's you trying to avoid the problem or to dismiss the problem, not you actually thinking about how to make that problem no longer a problem for you by resolving it.
You associate negatives such as my teammates will be disappointed, right? Like that can be a negative that can hold you back, except like you're going to miss shots either way. They're going to be disappointed either way. You can't control your teammates' emotions.
Are you going to comment on his movement stuff? Maybe not.
Think about it this way. When your KO died here, are you going to go on Twitter later and type an essay about this guy in particular and about how he threw your game and he's hurt you emotionally because of this death? Probably not. More driven by your fear of failure. Perfect. Even easier. You have to understand that that fear is causing failure. You will continue to fail if you continue to be afraid of taking aggressive gunfights with patience. It's a cycle that will never end. It's the dragon. So there's this graph.
I feel like after I made that whole spiel, I think he was pointing out at some of the issues that was actually good about that. That was actually good, like in the sense of like your teammates aren't going to care, right? People aren't going to care about you making a mistake, and they're not going to write a whole essay about it afterwards.
Because when you get better at like a task, when you integrate some new skill, you'll lose elo, and then you'll go to new heights. This is what happens if you're too afraid to implement that higher order skill that you know is correct. You will slowly just get worse and worse and worse and worse and lower elo because everyone else around you is going to get better. The other gold players in your lobby are going to overcome this fear.
He's just basically saying what the repercussions are if you don't overcome your fear. It's basically like the same thing as saying if you don't overcome your depression, you're going to be more likely to commit self-harm, which is true, and people don't want to do that, right? But how do you do that? How do you prevent yourself from fearing failure? There's different ways in which you can help yourself improve that. I think one thing that I think Woohoojin is struggling with is definitely understanding the mental game. The mental game of how you prevent yourself from tilting, how to build a proper confidence in yourself, how to remove like that sort of like negative mentality from your gameplay. But I think also there's something to like notice here as well, which is that like I feel like it's slightly hypocritical to give advice on this sort of mentality and saying that like you have to work out your mentality and you have to build up the ability to deal with this stuff without actually being capable of facing the dragon yourself. Like if you're playing to get to Radiant and you haven't gone to Radiant and you have someone else boost you, isn't that avoiding the whole like facing the dragon and dealing with your fear of failure because you just had someone else do it for you, right? You didn't take the time to learn it yourself. I don't know. It's just a weird connection that I'm making, and I maybe it's not in the most good faith, but like I definitely think there is a little bit of a problem when that's the case. So yeah, okay. So I'll teach you how to actually remove stress and remove anxiety from your gameplay. If you're trying to build someone's mentality up, what you have to do is find the root of what that fear is and then figure out what actually applies and what doesn't apply. People have negative experiences, and those negative experiences get saved up in your mind as a sort of data point that tells you, hey, this is something that's wrong. Some enemy KO, like your teammate's KO raged at you and you felt like shit. If you take that data point and you don't work through the negative emotions from that, what you're going to potentially learn in the future is that I don't want to play the game, or I'm scared of messing up because I don't want someone to flame me. And therefore you become more passive, or you become scared to play the game. You become a little bit more anxious. But one thing that you have to learn no matter what, so let me draw that for you guys. Control, influence, stress. I don't know if this is exactly the right terms for this. I'm not gonna lie, but I think it's a term of like spheres of control, I guess, or like, you know, realms of control, I suppose. The things that you can control are things like aim, right? Comms, like individual play, right? These are things that you can actually control and work on. And these are things that you have a very direct influence on. I can move, I can choose a comm, choose to work on my individuals. These, when you're in this realm of influence, these are things like team play, right? Reacting to teammates. Agent comp, right? You can maybe tell people, hey, like I would rather we play this kind of comp, or like, you know, role, like these kind of things. Sometimes you're going to be in a place where you have influence over the outcome. I can tell my teammate, hey, can you throw this flash for me? And if he throws a flash for me, then awesome, right? We can work on this, right? But in some cases, they're going to tell you, no, I can't throw that flash at you. Or I can't throw that flash for you. Or they throw a really bad flash, like in the case of like the Woohoojin VOD thing where he was laughing about, right? These are things that you can't fully control, but you can try to influence. You can try to help your teammates play better. You can try to influence how your teammates respond to a situation by telling them what to do, right? But if they don't listen to it, that's ultimately not something that you can fully control, right? So now you're in the realm of stress, which is like Smurfs, you know, or like bad teammates, toxicity, right? Things like past mistakes, right? This is the area of stress because you don't have control over these actual things. Your goal as a player is to increase the realm of control that you have, try to figure out ways to increase the influence, right? And then resolve the things that make you stressed out by virtue of ignoring or recognizing you have no control. If you can recognize that you don't have control in the things that you're stressed out about, then it's in your best interest to try to not worry about them. And sometimes the awareness that they are something that you can't control is part of what actually allows you to remove that stress. But the idea here is that like losing is in the realm of stress. You can influence, or actually it's in influence. You can't control losing because sometimes you will lose no matter what. This kind of thing is something that you can't fully control, and therefore, if you're not able to fully control it, you should not be trying to worry about it. And you should be working actively to create a good mental picture. What are the things I can control? What are the things I can't control? What are the things I want to control? The influence is the things that you want to control. You can actively build up your ability to control these things. But yeah, I mean, let's just take a look at this last bit. Focus points. In deathmatch, I see bad aim, but good technique. In ranked, I see bad aim and bad technique. Playing more DM aim training will fix the bad aim, but the bad technique in ranked is a problem of anxiety. Tackle that anxiety.
Route you feel resonates you the most. Mid-round, IGL, far less, and dial in on taking aggressive pools with proper technique.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just a summary of what he said, right? It is true that you have to tackle that anxiety, but I also think that the thing that actually is the biggest issue for this player is the lack of comfort around spray control, the lack of comfort around their movements, and therefore the lack of intentionality when they try to make plays. The over-focus of headshot and perhaps the idea of confirmation in DMs is actually, in a way, affecting you in-game by making you play a sort of like in DMs, you're playing an ideal that you can't match up in game because you literally cannot due to anxiety. Therefore, in deathmatch, you might actually want to try learning more about how you can play impractical and play much more basic, which is to spray the body and to try my hardest to like kill people as fast as possible without necessarily aiming for the head, and then build that up into my rank games, see where I'm at, and then try to include more headshots and try to include better technique into my fights afterwards. This was a really long review. I don't know if I would ever want to do this long of a review in the future. So maybe if I do these kind of things in the future for like another review of someone else, I would probably try my hardest to keep it within like 30 minutes or like 40 minutes. Honestly, I don't really want to go this deep into things, but I feel like since it's the first time, I think it's a good idea for me to go this deep and, you know, try to like give as much knowledge as I can about it. Hopefully that helps you guys get a better idea of what like The difference between a Radiant and a, a mortal coach is the difference between like what our focuses are, like the things that we think are important. I think Woohoojin isn't a bad coach. He has the right idea in a decent amount of situations, but he also misses the picture in other situations. And I think that's just the price that you pay if you want to, get taught by someone who is not at a high rank. There's a very good chance they're not going to have certain ideas correct. But at the end of the day, if you put in your effort and you put in the time and you listen to people that are better than you, you're going to be better, right? You're going to improve. And that's like the most important.